everyone, welcome to our 5th episode of the Home series. My name is Jaren.
And my name is Buse. And for our topic today, we'll be talking about learning to be in the same space as someone who contradicts with our views, opinions, or feelings. So I think it'll be a good conversation, so let's get started. So to start off the conversation, I want to add this idea of, I know it's sometimes tough to be able to share a space or try to be understanding of someone when they don't necessarily agree with you, your opinion or your feelings. And I know opinions or feelings aren't the same thing, but I just wanted to point, your mic isn't on. Can we just continue from here?
We are familiar. Okay, I'm sorry. I hope that...
Because I don't want to start over. So.
No, it's okay. If anything, yeah. Alright, let's just continue. Little mishap. Keep going.
Okay, so I wanted to say, I know someone not agreeing with your opinions is okay, but I feel like not agreeing with your feelings is not okay to me. Like, not necessarily they need to agree with how you feel, but a person needs to be able to validate you while still being able to disagree with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think, let me rephrase it a little bit, but I think the idea here is that you can be in a space with somebody and have different ideas, views, opinions, whatever it may be, but that person, it crosses a line when they're not respectful of that, even though you are have differing views. Sorry. So when you're saying feelings, so of course that plays into it. So if you're in a situation where you're at it may be work, it may be just in a group setting, like at friends or whatever it is, and you are in a disagreement with somebody. I don't know what's going on with me. With somebody, and you may have those different views, but it's a different line when they are not, you both are not respectful towards each other, and you may say things that are hurtful, and that's not considerate of the other person's feelings. So that's a completely different line that should not be crossed, and if you're in that situation, that is something, for example, in a work environment, you could probably talk to somebody about that and say something, but, today we're, like you said, focusing on what are little things that we could do to help us in those environments, in those situations. And I think that honestly, you've had a lot of experiences where you've been in situations, not just at work, but even with other friends or people. I remember especially at work that you had some people that you didn't agree with. So if you want to talk about that, if you're comfortable with it,
yeah, I actually wanted to talk about that because when you mentioned work, it kind of reminded me of the situation of what happened then. I actually, when I first started working at the job I'm at now, I did have some disagreements or complications with the people I worked with, and it wasn't just with one person I was experiencing this with, so it almost seemed like this was a ripple effect of a hostile environment. Not necessarily, it wasn't completely bad with every person, but I could see the effects of one person being negative and taking it out on someone else or disagreeing with someone in not a healthy way, especially at work. I think not necessarily that you have to be always professional, and I know a lot of people have other things going on in their lives, so I'm not talking about that, but still being able to disagree and be able to have the conversation without escalating it to a place where you're yelling at each other. So I had to deal with, not necessarily, I wasn't
passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't directly in the conversation or in the arguments that happened all the time, but there was 2 instances that happened, and I had to talk to 2 different people separately and address it and directly tell them without involving. It was I almost had to put aside my emotions and look at it in a professional manner and tell them directly, hey, this thing that you did, I understand you might have been feeling stressed, I understand you might have some things going on in your personal life, but I wanted to say something about it because it made me feel uncomfortable about the way I engaged with you in that moment. And I addressed it directly, saying that if that person talked to me in a calm manner and told me things that I could work on, that I could fix, or that I could do better, I would appreciate that when it's like addressed in a calm manner, but not when it's being like, when that person's just yelling at me or just scolding me for something that I did. And this, like, I definitely had experiences outside of work and in my other jobs.
Like at school even, too.
Yeah. I've had, this is like just looking back, like I've had so many experiences with disagreements that I had with people, and like, I don't remember a lot of times where I would like, yell back. There was only maybe one time that happened at work. Even with friends, I never had that happen with any of my friends, like where it was yelling back and forth. I don't think I'm the type of person that's able to...
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
I'm not able to communicate when someone's like raising their voice at me or yelling at me, because I can't do that to someone else, because like I know how that feels when it's done to me. So I'm someone that likes to retreat into my own space, feel my feelings, think about it, and come back with a more like reasonable approach.
And I think it's because you are so you're such a calm and patient person. Like you know, in every aspect you are like that. And I think that is like, when I said like that, like little things that can help is like, obviously patience isn't something that's learned in a day, but in those kinds of situations it's so important to not let that person affect you, because if you do, you're giving them what they want. So it's like, it's so important to be patient in those kinds of situations. And actually, when I was telling you to talk about it, like your experience, I was actually referring to another time, I think before, when you were working at Senor Taco.
Oh, I don't even remember.
I don't know if that was the case.
Well, the thing is, at that restaurant that I used to work at, there was so many instances that I can't pinpoint one, but I know there were so many times where I would try to speak up or voice my concerns, and it just wasn't heard or understood. And when I did want to, or when I did get any type of response back, it was always kind of like scolding me or insulting me. It was in a negative way. It never felt like I was being heard. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've noticed about myself and others too, and I'm sure you can maybe relate to this. When you're trying to explain yourself and it just feels like an endless like conversation where you're having with that person, but that person's not hearing or understanding you, and that's so exhausting. I feel like it takes so much patience, and you have to have such good control of your emotions to be able to handle a situation where the other person is not willing to understand or hear your side of the situation. And I don't think anyone should have to tolerate someone not hearing them or understanding them. Like, you shouldn't have to waste your breath or waste your words, whatever, like trying to explain your
energy or
everything. Energy and like your words, everything. Trying to explain to someone that's just not willing to be there for you. And honestly, I feel like, you know how there's a saying that it's like you and them versus the problem, not you and them versus each other. You have to, if someone's not willing to look at a situation where it's you and them versus the situation, that really just shows you where that person stands in your life. They're not willing to, even if it's just like your siblings or your parents or your co-workers, like, you should be a team no matter who you're working with. And if that person makes it seem like you're the issue, you're making all these mistakes, then that person's really not on your side and they're not trying to work with you. And I think that's something I've noticed in the past year.
And I think that that's actually something that I never put into words, but I think you said it perfectly, is that, like, with the you and them versus the problem, and not, because I think, like, and you're making me realize that I've had those interactions with people, because, like, when we first started talking about this topic, in my head I was like, I don't know if I have a lot of situations where I've been in that kind of, you know, exact situation, so to say, but now that you worded it like that, I can think of plenty of instances where, even something like, you know, with friends or family, it's like you have those disagreements, and certain people have handled that with you versus them kind of situation. With me, like, for example, like, it's like always, it doesn't have to be a fight. Like, I think some people also just, I think it's because they don't know how to control their emotions, that like it comes out in either anger or, like I said, them being passive aggressive towards you, or them being whatever. But it, like I said before, if you're giving into that, it's just giving them what they want, and you know, it's not going to necessarily solve the problem. But I think that if you're in that kind of situation, the best thing to do is just to step back. And I find myself doing that a lot, where like I think that's one of like the qualities that I like about myself, is that like whenever I find myself in a conversation or situation that would cause me to be angered, and usually I am, I always have the willpower to be like, I can feel myself getting angry, like it's time to step back, because like I don't want to have, especially if it's somebody either on a professional level or like with family.
Personal,
like
yeah.
I think I've had that happen with you too, and our older sister, where like we're in situations where we're arguing, you know, over little things, and it's like we're obviously like, we also do it to get on each other's, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, just to make each other more angry, because it's like we're trying to be annoying. But even in those situations, it's like I think I am able to like be like, the things that you're saying are not making me very happy at the moment, and like I'm gonna step back, I'm gonna think about it, I'm gonna come back to the situation with in a better headspace, and be able to address it better. And I think that it's even more important when you are in a more professional setting, like with work and stuff. It's like, because like if you're not able to handle that, even starting out with relationships like family and friends, then it's going to be even harder to handle it in a professional setting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, like you slip up with your friends, you slip up with your family, as much as it's like you come off mean, it's like you apologize, you're forgiven. But I feel like in a workplace, it's like different, because it's like you can't exactly yell at your boss, you can't exactly yell at your manager, like you can't, you know what I mean? It's like you have to find those things that trigger you, and you have to find the power, the will to step back and be able to calm down, rather than letting the anger take over you and like exploding in that moment, because that just has a lot of damage that it does, like, you know, to the relationship or in the situation.
Yeah, it's very true. And also I wanted to add on to what you said with like some people don't have the, I guess, I know this goes a little bit more into psychology as well, and I'm not an expert or anything, but I read a lot about psychology and sociology. So when you said like when one person makes it seem like it's you versus them, and they blame you for it, and it's like this constant blaming or this constant blame game or whatever, it almost as if like their pride and ego takes over, and they're not really acting out of a place of like, you know, wholehearted like understanding they come to you with, but it's more like I'm protecting myself, so that's their ego kicking in. It's like they're trying to protect themselves and not make themselves seem bad. Mm-hmm. But in that situation, they don't realize they're hurting their relationship with you. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important. Like, I know it's just, like I said, it goes into psychology a little bit, but it's like the ego and the id. Everybody has that, but some people have their ego very like prominent, and some people have their id very prominent, meaning like I think those are people that are more like people pleasers. Like, they don't really care about themselves, but they do everything for others. It becomes a codependent pattern.
Yeah, so both are bad in their own way.
Yeah, so there's both extremes, and that's really like, you have to find the middle ground and be able to balance it. You don't necessarily want to be a people pleaser where you're always like giving away from yourself, and you're never like accounting for yourself in a relationship with anyone, even at work. And you don't want to be the person that's always like making sure that they always look good to everyone else, and so you're just blaming everyone else around you, but seeming like you're protecting yourself. But meanwhile, what you're doing is you're breaking your trust with the person or that relationship, because you're you're blaming that person or you're blaming something else other than yourself all the time, that it makes you seem like you're not able to take accountability for your actions.
And
you can add on to it.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a lot, like, it is a lot harder to be able to take accountability, but I think that in those situations, it makes you, not that it makes you look so much better, but like it shows that you're so much more mature and can handle those tough situations.
Yes.
So I think it's a lot, like, it's so important to be able to do that, not just to look good, so to say, or have people know that you are mature, but I think that in the end, like, it helps you get over the situation better too. Like, being able to be like, this is what I messed up in, this is the area that I was wrong, and maybe this is something that you can fix. And I've had a lot of conversations like that with people, not necessarily at work, but with, you know, my close relationships, like friends and family, and even like with you guys. I think that was, like, again, like, that was something that I was learning as I grew up, is that, like, I was able to be like, I've always been good with accountability, like taking and being like, this is owning up to my mistakes, and I've come to you in the past too and been like, hey, like, this is where I messed up, and I apologize for that, but you also did this which hurt my feelings, and I want you to be aware of that. And that's, like, you know, that's the basic thing that I think everybody should be doing. But, you know, sometimes it's harder depending on the situation, you know.
And I think I want to add something, like, beautiful to this. Like, to me, authenticity is, like, top, like, one of my top goals, like, to be authentic all the time, and to be true to who I am, and true to, like, my own, like, I guess, goals and, like, life path, I would say. Like, I was trying to think of the right word there, but I think a lot of people are scared that if they show their true selves, like, who they are, without having to protect themselves or without having to people please, like, right in the middle is where you're authentic. You take accountability, you protect yourself in situations where you have to, but not in a way that you blame others. You take accountability, but then you retreat to your own space to protect yourself. Meaning, like, you take care of your own emotions, you tend to yourself, whatever you need, you provide yourself emotional support or get help from others that are able to help you, versus, like, you always trying to be at the beck and call of someone being like, oh, like, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Like, you also don't want to be in that space, like, headspace.
Yeah, and you don't want to compromise yourself
exactly.
as well.
And also, like, that's where authenticity for me comes in. I feel like right in the middle is where you're authentic. Like, yes, I want to take accountability for all the actions that I've took before. Like, I've the mistakes I've made, the you know, the people that I've hurt, or anything like that. Any negative emotion that I've made anyone feel, I take accountability and I face it, and I go tell that person, hey, I know you never said anything about this, or you never showed that you were upset about it, but I just want to apologize. If you felt uncomfortable, if you felt upset with the situation or with something that I've said, like, I apologize and I'm sorry. Even if that person did not feel that way, that builds trust, and that builds, like, lifelong relationships.
Of course.
And I think that's why a lot of people, like I said, are afraid to show their authentic selves, because they think that if they take accountability, they are almost like they're not protecting themselves. And they always feel like they have to, because they live in this constant fear of, like, no one will accept me if I am who I am.
Yeah.
But I feel like that hurts you more, and I feel like a lot of people get to, like, later in life, they look back and they weren't living their lives true to themselves, and that's why you see a lot of older people that, like, say that, and then, you know, I didn't live my life true to myself, because they didn't own up to their mistakes, they didn't take accountability, they didn't follow their own truth, and it comes back to hurt you in the end. So
I think part of it is also that I'm sorry, I'm, like, constantly blanking, I don't know what's going on, but I was going to say, I think that part of it is that some people, those people who are, you're saying, are, like, you know, have this thing of protection going on. I think part of it is that maybe they have been hurt in the past, or they have been in a lot of situations where their trust has been broken with people that they thought they could trust. And it's the thing of, like, building up your walls, and I think that they're scared to bring them down. And I felt like that too as well, like for a while, in certain situations, not in like every single aspect of my life, but you know, in certain types of relationships and whatever, it's always hard doing the good thing. It's always hard doing the thing that you're supposed to do. But I think that doing it not only builds your character, but like it strengthens you as a person, because you know, you could keep staying behind your wall and being safe, so to say, but you're never really learning, you're never really growing. So I think that's why it's so important to be able to do that, to be able to own up to your mistakes, to be able to, you know, be like, this is where I messed up and this is where I need to improve. You know, that is why I think that I'm saying, like, you're not really growing. It's because if you're not owning up to your mistakes and not acknowledging them as a mistake, then you're not fixing them either. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's part of growth. It's something that I think you, like not saying like that you should be doing, but, you know, pretty much you should. You know, if you want to improve as a person, that's one of the biggest things you could do, is be self-aware. And we keep going back to that. We keep saying, like, self-aware, but it really is, like, I think it's one of the things that people don't necessarily always bring up. Like, you don't talk about how being self-aware is so important. But it really is, you know. It comes back to almost every topic, and even in our last video, we kept saying that as well. But it's so important to be able to recognize the things that you did wrong and recognize the parts of yourself that you have to fix. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like, oh, they're a flaw and that there's something wrong with you. Like, everybody has something that they have to fix, you know, so you don't look at it negatively either, basically, what I'm trying to say. It's just normal. Like, as humans, we're meant to make mistakes, grow from it. Like, it's just part of life. It's part of growing up. So just because you made a mistake, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or that you know, it's like you can't fix it. It's just, you gotta take the right actions. It's part of being mature. You know, owning up to what you did.
And I wanted to also add, like, taking responsibility as an adult, like, for your own life, for your own actions, is so important. And I feel like you said self-awareness, it also comes into play there, because if you're not self-aware, if you're not aware of the things that you do or how things around you impact you, then you're probably gonna keep making mistakes and then keep blaming others or yourself, which is also not healthy to blame yourself constantly, because sometimes the situation, there's nothing you can do to change it. And so you just need to accept and be able to, you know, take accountability, take responsibility, and keep moving forward. Whether that means you apologize to someone, whether that means you apologize to yourself. Sometimes we have to do that, and I think a lot of people forget that we have to turn to ourselves and forgive ourselves and forgive others. And I actually saw, I don't remember where I saw this the other day, but it was about forgiveness, and it was saying, like, forgiveness is hard, blaming is easier. Like, it's so easy to blame someone or a situation for how you turned out, which also goes back to, like, the victim mentality, which is not a great thing. But at the same time, you should be able to look at, like, areas where you've made mistakes, where you've messed up, and you should be able to forgive yourself, and then look at others and be like, if I made a mistake here, then I should extend that forgiveness to other people, because if I have to forgive myself, I should also forgive others. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to be in contact constantly with people that have hurt you, or that have, you know, said things to you that you never want to talk about, or you never want to talk to them.
Hurt by,
yeah, that's exactly what I meant. I think that's what I meant before. But yeah, so it's like, forgiveness is hard, but it's necessary, and taking accountability and being self-aware is a part of, you know, growing up. And this is another idea. I'm sorry if you wanted to add something, but this is the last thing I wanted to say. In the past, I would say 5-6 years, this has happened twice to me. One time, a few years ago, when I had, like, my spiritual awakening, it almost felt like I was a different person. I remember I started meditating around that time, and I started taking accountability for the things that I've done, and not blaming other people, and just being like, this is just where I am, and I accept it, and I forgive everyone, and I forgive myself. And I remember at that time, I almost felt like, you know, like a snake sheds its skin. It's painful, but it's necessary for them. That's how I felt. It was so painful to go through that experience of meditation where, like, I was forgiving. Yeah, it was tough. I also had that very recently in the past month where I was meditating again, and I just had this feeling of like, I'm like, I am not the person I was 2 years ago. I'm not the person I was a year ago. And I was like, oh my God, like, I've changed. And it was like a realization that happened in one moment. But it's like, it's painful that when you're going through it for months and years, but the minute you come to the realization that, like, you're not that person anymore, and you've changed, and the people around you accept you for that growth, are the people you need to keep around, because not everyone accepts the growth that you go through either.
That's so true.
And I know it's like, it's a lot to like think about for some people, but it was just like, just a beautiful experience for me, so.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I think that what you said, especially at the end, is so true. Like, at first I was like, yeah, like, of course you're not the person you were last year, like, in my head, and then when you explained it, I'm like, yeah, like, it makes sense. But, you know, every day, like, you grow as a person, you have one new experience, whether it's something small or big, and I think that you're right, like, as you grow and you start adapting and you learn new things and you become better at some things, and maybe you still make mistakes in different ways, but you keep learning. And it is so important to have people who are supportive of that journey rather than people who bring down and remind you of every single mistake you've made along the way. And I think there are some people like that. Maybe it's their personality, maybe it's just how they feel towards you. Like, you will never know, really. But it is so important to have people who are supportive around you in every situation, not just, like, in terms of growth, but, like, in every way. You don't want people who are, like, waiting for your downfall, like, you know, around you.
That's, like, the most painful thing is, like, when, and I've felt this with certain people in my life, and it's just, it's so heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking for me. It's as if I wasn't broken enough, and I was on the floor, like, not like physically, but like at a low point. Yeah, like I was at a low point in my life.
On the floor.
Not like that.
I just imagine, like, you being, like, on the floor. Like, no. Alright, keep going.
Like, mentally, like, at a low point, or emotionally at a low point, and it feels like when that person, like, knows you and, like, uses, like, whatever they can against you in that moment, whether they say something negative about you, whether they, like, hit you in the right spot by saying that one thing, like, it has happened, and it, like, I literally felt like my heart physically felt like it was broken.
Yeah.
And the pain of that is so, like, you hear that some people actually die from a heartbreak. Like, it can happen.
Yeah. The stress being caused, like, scientifically speaking, from the stress being caused, like, if you're very, you know, emotions have a big impact on that, too.
Yeah, and it's just, like, I don't know what goes through those people's minds, but I feel like they in themselves are in a negative place constantly, that they're not able to look at the good things in life, and I kind of feel bad for them, for where they are in that moment, and I wish, that's the thing, I wish I could do something, I wish I could make them see it. Sorry guys, the video was cut short, so I'm just going to continue where I left off. I was just saying that I feel bad, and I feel for the people that are not in a good place in their own lives, and they constantly feel like negative emotions or negative about themselves, that they have to project that onto others. Even though it is unhealthy, it's like they have to struggle with that every day. And I know it's like a part of conditioning and like what they have to go through growing up possibly. But at the same time, it's not no one's fault, so it's not up to anyone or me to have to go and fix that person or make them see it a different way, see life a different way. So thank you for tuning in for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did, and I hope you learned something from it as well.
Yep, and make sure to comment down below with any feedback or to share any of your ideas, and hope to see you next time. Bye. Bye.
That's not gonna be in there.
Oh. You could add this as a blooper while we're sitting in silence. It'd be like 5 hours later. Like, you know, the SpongeBob thing.
What was that?
I don't know. A glitch. A glitch. Okay. Okay,
right.
ready? My professional clapping.
Okay, can we stop the moving?
I am a bloop.
Oh my god.
And a bloop! Okay, are we ready?
You gotta do the intro. I wasn't giving you an attitude.